Brothers and sisters, this is a drawing that I made of Chandler Riggs, also known as Carl Grimes, on the hit AMC TV series The Walking Dead. Hope you enjoy it, nation. The Walking Dead, Issue 7. Well, hello, my brothers and sisters of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you yet another review on the grand and grisly tale of The Walking Dead. For those of you that have been following along, our last chapter, our last issue, it marked the end of the first story arc and ultimately saw one of the main characters, Shane, kind of just go batshit crazy, and we found out that he was in fact in love with Lori, Rick's wife. Since they had presumed Rick to be dead, Shane just kind of thought that everything was going to be fine and he'd be able to slide right into her panties. And things have not been the same since Rick had come back, and Shane basically was about to kill him, and Rick's 7-year-old son, Carl, shot Shane in the throat. So obviously we're going to see how that affects Carl moving forward, having to have shot another human, especially somebody he knows. This chapter starts out and signifies the second part of, or the second story arc, and it's called Miles Behind Us. The beginning of it, first couple pages, starts out with it being a flashback to probably a few weeks prior with Shane and Lori and Carl. Shane had, said that he would protect them and help them get to Atlanta, where Lori's parents were presumed to be. I mean, they were there, but obviously Atlanta, by the time they got there, they couldn't even get in because Atlanta was already overrun, and the army was already in there trying to bomb the streets to kill these zombies and everything else. So they're basically in this traffic jam at the side of the road, and they get out of the car, and Lori's like, "Oh, this is great. Carl's finally fell asleep. He hasn't slept in 2 days since we left." And Shane says, "Oh yeah," and they talk a little bit about what's going on, and Lori basically just feels alone. She's like, Rick's in a coma in the hospital. He doesn't even know what's going on. My parents are dead. Atlanta has fallen. The whole world's gone to shit. I feel so alone. And Shane kind of comes over and puts his hand on her shoulder, and then the next thing you know, the two are locking lips. So in a momentary feeling of weakness and loss for her, where she felt like she was alone and had nobody, good old Shane was there to stick it in her, because the next thing you know, they're tussling and doing the horizontal mambo there on the side of the road. And while it was just purely a physical thing and just feeling wanted or needed or with somebody, for Shane, it seemed like it was an entirely different thing, as he's mumbling things like, "I've always wanted this and I've always loved you," type of thing. So this was the flashback to kind of show us that moment and what happened and what Shane was referring to about that night on the side of the road that Lori had said was a mistake. It then goes and brings us back to present time, to Shane's burial ground, and everybody just kind of looking at his gravesite and walking away one by one. Lori is the last one standing there, and she kind of just, goes and just spits on his grave. She's pissed. She feels betrayed, especially because of the fact that she trusted this man with her and her son's life, and to find out the whole time, or at least most of the time, that he was basically just wanting to be with her, with no regard for the fact that she was married, that her husband, although in a coma, was still alive in a hospital somewhere. And Rick even goes and says, if this is bad, if Shane has, he's talking to Dale later on, and Dale says, "I could see this coming. He's changed since you came back." And Rick says, "Yeah, but Shane was probably my best friend in the whole world, and we really got to watch out for each other and just watch what this whole catastrophe is doing to everybody. Because if something like this after a month could break this man down, then it could happen to any of us." So Dale also goes and tells Rick, he says, Andrea's been counting the days and marking it on a calendar, and tomorrow's Christmas. And Rick's like, grabs Dale, and he's like, "Don't you fucking say a word about that." He's like, "That's the last thing I need. The world has gone to complete hell, and the last thing we need to do is try to explain to the kids why not only is everybody dead, and the dead are walking again and are alive, and all the people they love and know are gone, but Santa Claus isn't coming either. We're skipping Christmas this year." Dale says, "Okay," and then he also says, "Hey, listen, we all kind of looked up to Shane because he was a police officer. He was strong, and basically he could fight and he seemed to take charge and know what he could do. None of us are really in a position to do that, and there's not really a strong leader amongst us. So we all talked about it, and we would like you to kind of lead us. And we've been in this camp for too long. We know that. So Rick says, okay, I'll take on that position, and we're going to pack up and we're going to leave tomorrow. So he does go and speak with Carl briefly and says, hey, just let me know, son, if you need to talk about what happened, because clearly Carl now has, killed a zombie, as well as, kind of like his Uncle Shane almost in the last, couple of days. And he's 7, so just having kids, man, I couldn't imagine having to have a child go through that. I mean, hell, I'm 35 and I couldn't imagine going through that, but this is obviously end of the world, times are different type of thing. So we kind of end that portion there. The next morning they get up. Carl slept a little bit late. Everybody's packed and ready to go. They're all going to pack in the RV, it looks like, and hit the road. Even though they're outside of Atlanta, and as far as I knew, there wasn't a whole lot of snow that far down south. It is snowing. Clearly it's Christmas, as they said, but nobody's mentioning anything about that. And they take off and are driving presumably for the whole day. Later on that night, they do have to stop because there's a car blocking the road. So a few people, Rick and Dale and stuff, they get out and they go to push the car out. And as they get the car out of the way far enough and go back to the RV, in the shadows, Rick sees someone. So after briefly assuming that there's walkers surrounding them and Rick pulling out his gun and almost shooting the figures in the dark, he finds out that they are living, breathing human beings. The gentleman introduces himself as Tyreese and also his daughter and I guess her boyfriend, Julie and Chris. And, Rick's like, holy shit, I almost shot you, man. You can't just sneak up on me. He explains to him that they've kind of been holed up at their house for a while, but they've been out of food for a couple of days now. Rick shares some food with them, and the group does, invites them to, stay in the RV for the night. Neither one really quite trust each other fully because Lori, that doesn't settle well with him even making the offer. Tyreese also just kind of says, backs off and says, you know what, we'll sleep in this car over here by the side of the road and we'll kind of talk tomorrow. So the next morning, he and Rick are talking, and, basically they're just kind of like, hey, listen, I really appreciate you kind of respecting us. I know I told you that we were just a little weird about strangers, but ultimately, we don't know if you're freaking cannibals, right? So Rick's like, we're not there yet, but maybe soon, And the world's changed, so they can't trust anybody. Tyreese tells him a story about how the world has changed, and a town that they would go into to kind of go to this general store and loot. There was a 60-year-old something man that tried to rape his daughter. He beat the guy to death. Tyreese did. And Rick says, well, whatever, man. That's what any father would have done. I may be a man of the law, but what's right is right, and that he shouldn't have done something like that. Period. Especially it's your fucking daughter. And Tyreese says it's not about the world changing this person and how it is. It's about what happened to me. I don't even care that I killed him, So it's kind of a dog-eat-dog world, and that's what he's trying to explain. A couple of walkers happen upon them. Rick calls them roamers because they just kind of roam around, and that's how they came upon that herd that came upon that small herd, that group, when they were attacked at the camp. And he and Tyreese work together to separate them, separate and conquer and take them out with a hammer, which Tyreese carries, and Rick's trusty hatchet. And then pretty much, they just decide that they're going to come along with the group, and they're thankful for it. So they're traveling again and again come upon, this one even worse, they come upon, a bunch of cars piled up and, kind of get out, and they have a few hours before dark. It's the next day now, and everybody's working hard to, now that we have another strong man, Tyreese, to help out, everybody's working hard to try to get the cars out of the way. Rick kind of comes upon Lori, and she's sort of standing off by herself, and while he's talking to everybody else, and he notices there's something wrong with her, and this is where the chapter ends, or the issue ends. He walks up to her and says, "Lori, are you okay?" And she's looking down, and she says, "Rick, I'm pregnant." And now, as we know, just from the beginning of the chapter, she let Shane nail her. I don't know how long ago, but within the last month. And Rick says, "Are you sure? How long?" And she says, "I don't know. My period's been real weird anyway since all this stuff happened. Not really regular," or whatever she says, and that she can just feel it, and she knows, and it's probably been for a week or two now. Now, we don't know, and this is where the drama and the soap opera part starts, and it was kind of the same thing in the TV series, at least for me and my wife when we were thinking about it. who knows whose baby that is? You know, I mean, is it Shane's or is it Rick's? I mean, Rick's been out of the coma now for a few weeks and back with the group, but was it him when he came back and him and his wife got together for some relations, or is it Shane's baby? I guess we'll see, and that's where everything ends for that chapter. So let me know, nation, what you think in the comments down below. I certainly hope that some of you are reading along or rereading the series, or maybe even getting into it. You know, because we certainly have a lot of fans from various genres that are hopefully tuning in and watching these reviews. So throw me a like if you think I deserve it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We'll catch you in the next one, nation. As always, thank you for watching, brothers and sisters. Be sure to subscribe and take a look at some of my other videos. Thanks. See you next time, nation.